going to tell you the story of a time that I was almost scammed out of $3,000 by a roommate that I met on Facebook Marketplace. I know that you're probably going to be thinking throughout this story, what an idiot I am. But I've totally learned my lesson since this happened, so I figured I would just make this video for entertainment purposes. I'm normally make videos about autism on this page. This isn't really an autism video, but this is just like, I don't know, kind of stupid, silly story time that I wanted to tell on here. I guess in some way this can go along with autism a little bit because like a lot of autistic people are more like vulnerable to being scammed and stuff like that. And like, because like we can't pick up on social cues or whatever. I think this scam though had everything to do with me being stupid and not being able to like see red flags that I should have seen in hindsight. But also, I hope that this story can serve as a cautionary tale for some people not to make the stupid mistakes that I made in the video. So let's get into the story. Let's go back to February of 2024. During this time, I was living in a studio apartment in Omaha, Nebraska, and my rent at this studio apartment was over $1,000 a month. And I know what you're thinking, oh, $1,000 a month is cheap or whatever. Not for Omaha, Nebraska. Omaha, Nebraska has some of the lowest like living costs in the country. So that was actually quite expensive for that area and also quite expensive for my particular budget. I was not even making $45,000 a year. I had a full-time corporate job and my take-home pay was like $1,280 every 2 weeks after taxes and everything else. So literally like my rent payments for this apartment, like once you add on like pet rent and like all the fees that they typically charge you at an apartment complex, like the trash fee and stuff, like my rent payments were like $1,150 a month. So literally my rent payment was like 90% of my take home pay for like one biweekly paycheck at my corporate job. And so because of this, I was forced to get a second job to be able to afford this apartment. And I know you're thinking, why the hell did you move into this apartment in the first place? And I realized maybe this wasn't the smartest decision, but I guess my excuse is that, first of all, the cost of living is so damn high now, and the rent has gone up so much. It's not even funny how expensive it is. I mean, when I was looking at apartments during this time, it was hard finding anything under $1,000 a month, even in Omaha. I mean, I guess I may have been able to find something under $1,000, but I would have had to live um, in like a rundown apartment that like was older and hadn't been updated in a long time. Um, and also, I didn't want to have to live with a roommate. I really wanted to try not having to live with a roommate because, like, I'm an introvert. I'm autistic as well, and I have certain things that I like about like my living space and things like that. And just being an introvert, like, I like my own space. I don't want to live with another person because or at least like a stranger because like I don't like the awkwardness of like feeling like you have to socialize with them like when you see each other in like the living room or whatever. Like I didn't want to have to live with a roommate. So I was trying really hard to not have to live with a roommate, and I wanted to live somewhere where I was like going to be happy and comfortable, and live somewhere where I would want to stay for a while because like I had been moving almost every year for like the past several years. But I guess that's my excuse. The other thing justification that I had for living at this particular apartment complex was that the apartments were actually 2 miles away from my job at the time. So my commute to work was really convenient and like really quick. So that was another thing. I thought, oh, it would be worthwhile to live this close to work anyway. But in hindsight, I realized that I probably should have realized that like nobody can live alone in this economy. Like either I should have moved in with my mom or I should have found a roommate right off the bat, but I didn't. But anyway, I had to pick up a second job. And so I was working a corporate job Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And then I had a part-time job at a local coffee shop. And I worked there. I worked there a couple evenings after my corporate job. Like I think Thursday, Friday, I would come work a couple hours. And then all day Saturday, Sunday, I worked. So I literally was working 7 days a week. I had no days off except for major holidays like Christmas and Thanksgiving and stuff like that. And after a while, I realized how burned out I was getting from that, from just like working constantly. I was working almost 60 hours a week and just all, having to do all of that. And I thought, you know what, I don't think it's worth being able to live in this nice apartment, um, because I'm never at this apartment. Like I'm always at work. I'm working my ass off just to pay for this apartment that I never get to spend that much time in. And, again, I was sleep deprived. I was just burned the fuck out. And I was just like, you know what? I think I just need to bite the bullet and get a roommate. So initially I was going to try, because this was February, my lease was going to end in August. And so initially I was going to just try to stick it out and make it to the end of my lease and then look for a roommate situation. But then I realized that like, I don't think I can do this. I'm getting so burned out to the point that I'm not going to be able to function if I try to continue doing this for another 6 months. So I decided that I was going to find a subleaser to take over the remainder of my lease at the studio apartment, and then I was going to move into an apartment with a roommate. That way I could quit my second job and just only have to work one 40-hour-a-week job. I go on Facebook Marketplace, and I know what you're thinking. You're such an idiot for using Facebook Marketplace to find a roommate. I know that, but also what other options did I have? Keep in mind, I'm autistic. I've always struggled to make friends. I've always had very few friends. So it's not like I had a friend that I could have gotten an apartment with. Like the only friend that I did have that I potentially could have gotten an apartment with, and I actually asked them if they were interested, she said that, she wanted to move in with her boyfriend. So that wasn't an option. So I had literally nobody that I could move in with. So that was my only option, was Facebook Marketplace. So I know, not the smartest idea, but what do you do when you don't have a lot of friends, right? So I go on Facebook Marketplace. I'm in all of these like Omaha roommate groups or whatever, and I make a post just saying like, a little bit about me, saying that like, oh, I'm looking for a roommate to cut down on living expenses. I do have a cat, so I need someone that likes animals. I would prefer someone that doesn't throw parties, because like I'm a grandma and I want to go to bed relatively early, just that kind of stuff. And a few days later, I get a Facebook message from a woman who I'm going to call Donna. I will be using fake names for everybody involved in this scam situation. Yes, obviously the people were posing to be someone that they weren't, but I will get into it a little bit later. But these people were actually pretending to be like real people. So I'm not going to use like the actual names of the people that they were posing as. I'm just going to use fake names. So I get a Facebook message from Donna, and she says, hey, it looks like you're looking for a roommate. I'm trying to help my daughter out with a roommate situation. She just received a job offer for a job in Omaha, and she's looking to move, so I'm trying to help her. And I'm like, oh, great, yeah, that would be wonderful. And so she asked me to give her my phone number so she can pass it along to her daughter. And later on that night, I get a text message from the daughter, which we're going to call Cassie. And we just start like talking back and forth, like over text message, just like typical, like get to know you type questions, like, what are your hobbies? Like, what do you do for work? That sort of thing. And after talking a little bit, we decide that like we think we'd be a good fit for roommates, and that we want to go forward with becoming roommates and getting an apartment together. And so I'm going to point out the first red flag that I noticed, and that was that the text messages with Cassie and I, there was like poor grammar, just like weird sentence structure. If I can figure out how to edit things, I will see if I can um, like pop a picture of like some of the text messages between her and I on the screen. If I can figure out how to do that, I'm not good with any type of technology, so I don't know. Um, but like it was like kind of broken English. I noticed that. And I also noticed that that was also the case with the text messages between her mom and I, that like it was broken English. I brushed it off as possibly a language barrier, because she also, while we were messaging back and forth, she asked me to send her a picture of me, which she sent me pictures of her. And so I brushed it off as like a language barrier because she appeared to be like Hispanic based off of the pictures and based off of like her last name. So I thought, oh, there's just a language barrier. Like maybe English wasn't her first language, or put the other thing that I brushed it off as what it possibly could be is like maybe she had like some type of learning disability that like affected her like speech or whatever. So I thought it could be either one of those things. So I just brushed it off. In hindsight, those were red flags, but I brushed it off. So anyway, I continue messaging between her, and I send her the link to an apartment complex that I was interested in living at. And I tell her I'm going to go ahead and set up a tour to go see this place. And I set the tour up and I offer to FaceTime her while I'm touring the apartment, just so like she can also see it and stuff like that. And she goes, "Oh no, there's no need for that. Just go ahead and send me pictures and videos." And that was another red flag. But I also brushed it off as the fact that the tour I had scheduled for like 9 o'clock, 9:30 in the morning, and she was in California. In California, in Nebraska, there's a 2-hour time zone difference. So for her, it would have only been 7:30. So I thought, she's probably just now getting, waking up, or she might still be sleeping at that time. So like I can understand she probably doesn't want to wake up for, a FaceTime call at that time. So I just completely ignored that red flag. I go tour the apartment. I send her the pictures and the videos. She lets me know that she likes the place and that she would like to move forward with applying for the apartment. So as we're going through the application process, because as you know, with any apartment, any rental, you have to pay all of these application fees and deposits and things like that. And so I was trying to coordinate with Cassie, like how we were going to go about splitting the payment and everything. And so I throw out the idea of her just Venmoing me for her half of the rent and the deposits and all those things. And she tells me, "Oh, actually, I don't use Venmo or Cash App." And I'm about to tell her, well, can you like maybe set up a Venmo or Cash App, because that's going to make things easy for us when we're like splitting payments for the apartment. And before she answers that, she tells me, "Oh, I can just have my mom send you an e-check." And my dumbass, like I didn't know that an e-check wasn't even a thing. And I was like, "Oh, that sounds fine." I didn't, because I feel like, when I think of a scam, like I usually think of someone like getting a hold of your bank account information, like them tricking you into sending you your banking information so that they can like wire money out of your bank account. Like I thought it was going to be something like that. But I didn't think, I know I'm stupid. Like I didn't realize how I could be scammed with a check, a e-check or whatever. I later found out e-checks aren't a thing. But we'll get into that. But I'm like, okay, sure, that's fine. We fill out the application for the apartment and we get that submitted and we get approved for the apartment. And I will just say that throughout this entire thing, I just had a bad gut instinct. Like I felt like something was off. which I should have listened to that. But I just kept trying to reassure myself. Like I had an instinct that I was being scammed, but I just kept reassuring myself, like, no, this can't be a scam. You know, I tried to tell myself things like we wouldn't have gotten approved for the apartment because, like, normally they run a background check on you and stuff. And, like, I thought they would have found, you know, they would have caught it if it was a scam. They would have, like, we wouldn't have been approved because they would have caught the fact that this was a scam. The other thing, like, I found myself doing some research. Like, I looked back at Donna, you know, the mom's Facebook page, you know, the one that initially reached out to me. Because I figured that, like, if this was a scam, like her Facebook page would have, like, just been recently open. But I looked at her Facebook page, and it looked like you know, there was posts from as far back as like 2010. So I thought, like, this has to be real because, like, you know, it's not like this Facebook page was just opened like the other day. Like, you know, that's what you typically think a scammer would be. And the other thing is, I could see, like, once we submitted the application for the apartment, like, I received a PDF copy of the application, and it showed, like, the information that, like, but I entered in for, like, my income and things like that, and also her information. And you know, you had to put, like, your employer name, like, obviously how much money you earn, your supervisor name, that sort of thing, and, like, a phone number for them. And I literally Google searched the name of the employer that she listed, and they were a legitimate company. And I also looked up the name of the supervisor that she listed, and I found their LinkedIn profile. So I thought, like, this has to be real. Like, it's not like she put in some, like, fake information. This has to be real. Fast forward to the day that we're supposed to move into the apartment. Now, here's another thing. You know, again, she was in California and was going to be allegedly moving to Omaha. I didn't have she didn't give me a definite date of when she would be moving. Like, I kept asking her, do you know when you're going to be moving into the apartment? And she didn't really have anything. And it's like, you know, that was another thing that was kind of weird. Cause, like, normally when you get a job offer, you're given a start date. You know when things are going to happen. And she just, like, didn't have a definite answer of when she would be moving. And then anyway, it comes to be the day that we're supposed to move into the apartment. You know, she's still back in California, and I'm in Omaha, and I'm looking to move into the apartment. And so we both have to sign the lease in order for me to get possession of the apartment. So I sign the lease and get that taken care of, and then she's supposed to sign the lease. And I remember the day before our move-in day, she was trying to sign the lease, but she was having some issues with it. I wasn't sure exactly what the problem was. And then it gets to, you know, and then I stop hearing from her. And then it gets to be the morning of the day we're supposed to move into the apartment. And I took that day off of work so that I could get moving and stuff done. And I don't hear anything from her. I try messaging her. I try calling her on the phone number that, you know, I had. The funny thing is that when I tried to call the phone number, it was like a Google Voice thing. So I thought that was a little strange. And then I also tried to reach out to her mom on Facebook. Like, I tried calling her on Facebook Messenger, sending her messages saying, like, hey, can you get with your daughter and see if she can sign the lease? Because, yeah, I couldn't get the keys to the apartment until she signed the lease. So I was standing around waiting in my old apartment for her to get this lease signed. And I wasn't hearing from her, and I was a little concerned. I thought maybe she was, like, ghosting me or something like that. And then I eventually hear from her, and she's like, well, I'm still struggling. I'm still having, like, difficulties with signing the lease. Because what you had to do was, like, when you were signing it, they had you upload a picture of your driver's license, and then, like, you had to do some, like, kind of facial scanning type thing to like verify your identity. Um, I don't know how to explain it. And she was like, I guess it wasn't taking her driver's license. And I asked her to like send me screenshots of like the error message or whatever that it was giving her, and you know, to see if I could maybe try to figure out what the problem might be. Um, she sends me screenshots. Um, yeah. And then the apartment complex was also like trying to get a hold of her, and it seemed like they were struggling to get a hold of her, and so they were kind of going through me as like the messenger, because like they were trying to call her, but she wasn't answering the phone. And so like, you know, I'm kind of just getting a little frustrated because I'm like, this is holding me up, and I took the whole day off of work, and like at this point, it's getting closer to the end of the day. It's like 4 or 5 o'clock at this point, and like I still don't have the keys to the apartment, and I was hoping that I would be able to like get everything done. You know, I felt like I just wasted taking the day off. Um, then finally, the apartment complex, you know, because she was still having issues with uploading the driver's license or whatever, the apartment complex decides to just go ahead, and they decide to do something on their end where she could bypass the part where she had to upload the driver's license and all that stuff, and then go ahead and sign the lease. That way I could get the keys and I could move in or whatever. In hindsight, this was a red flag, but I'm gonna get there. So she is able to finally sign the lease, and then I finally get to move into the apartment. So I start getting everything moved in. I spend the first night at the new apartment. You know, just excited about the fact that like I'm gonna be able to quit my second job. I'm gonna be able to have weekends off again. I'm not gonna have to like mentally kill myself every day working 60 hours a week. And then the next day I go to work. I was working like a hybrid job at the time, so I worked in office Tuesday, Wednesday. It was Tuesday. So I go into the office and I'm just going about my work day. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling happy, you know, feeling happy about like, again, being able to not have to work 2 jobs anymore. And then I get the email from Cassie sending me over the e-check that was supposed to pay for her portion of the rent, the first month's rent, and like all the deposits and stuff. And so let's keep in mind that Cassie's half of the first month's rent, the deposits, the fees, etc., was about $1,200. And this e-check that she sent me was for $4,000. And she lets me know that like, oh, I'm sending you $4,000. You'll use the $1,200 for the for my half of the rent payment, and then the other $2,800 I'm going to have you route or send that money somewhere else, because that's going to go towards paying for movers to move me out to Omaha, and also for me to get like furniture and things like that for the apartment. This is where you're going to be like, you are fucking stupid. I literally, my dumb self, deposited the check. I deposited the check. Heard of these type of scams before where, you know, someone is supposed to pay you so much money and they end up sending you a check for way more money than what they were supposed to send you for. You know, and the check ends up being fraudulent. Like you know, that's a pretty common scam. And when I got that message that, you know, oh, you know, I'm sending you $4,000, my heart sank. I was like, this can't be a scam. I know you're thinking that I'm stupid for depositing that check. And I guess in my defense, I think I was in denial, first of all, that this was a scam. I wanted to believe that it wasn't. And, you know, and looking back, I missed a lot of red flags. But I think I was just so burned out from having to work two jobs, and I didn't want to admit that like this was a scam, you know. I I wanted to just get out of this situation, and I didn't want, I thought everything seemed to be working out fine with me getting out of that situation. I didn't want to believe that this was a scam. Other excuse for depositing that check and not thinking twice about it was the fact that I had all of these reasons to believe that it wasn't a scam. Like I said, the information that she put on the application, and the fact that we even got approved for the apartment in the first place. Like if this was somebody, being someone that they're not, if this person is not who they say they are, I would have thought that the apartment complex would have caught that, and we would have never even been approved for the apartment. But I'm going to get more into that in just a little bit. But my dumb self deposits that check. And after I deposit the check, I just had this horrible feeling. I was still at work because I have like on my banking app, I have like, the mobile deposit. So that's how I deposited the fake check. Because it was a fake check, but we'll get there. I just spoiled it. But after I deposit this check for $4,000, I immediately just have like this horrible feeling in my gut the whole rest of the day. Like I had the most unproductive day at work that day because I was just worrying, and I just was like, was that a fraudulent check? Was that a fake check? Am I being scammed? If I am being scammed, whoever the person behind the scam, they're pretty damn smart. They got me good. So literally I'm spending the whole rest of the afternoon at work on my work computer, Googling things like, how do you know that you're being scammed? Or how do you know that a check is fraudulent? And I'm finding information, about like the thing that kind of like really made me think, okay, this definitely is a scam, was when I was searching like, how do you know a check is fake? What it told me was that like on a check, there's going to be numbers at like the top hand corner of the check, and that's supposed to be like the check number. And down at the bottom of the check, where there's like the routing number and stuff like that, those numbers, that there was a 3-digit number, and that 3-digit number is supposed to match the check number, but on this check it didn't match. If I can, I don't know if I can pull up a picture of the check, like pop it up on the screen. I mean, it's obviously a fake check, so don't even try to like deposit it, but maybe I'll see if I can, and I'll just like obviously scratch out her name and things like that. But the number, like the check number and the number at the bottom of the check, did not match. The other thing I noticed on this check was that her last name was misspelled. It wasn't spelled the way that she was spelling it on like the application and things like that. So my heart just like sinks, and I'm like, oh crap, like I am being scammed. And so then like I go home from work, and like the whole entire night I'm just like continuing to Google search things related to like scams and stuff. Like I remember I searched what happens if you deposit a fraudulent check. And I saw all these things of like, well, you can get into serious trouble. You can like be arrested if you deposit a fraudulent check. And I'm just like, oh fuck. So I decide to call my bank, like the 1-800 number for my bank. And first I basically tell the person that I speak to, I think I am being scammed. I received a check, and I pretty sure that it might be a fraudulent check. And so she pulls up my bank account information and pulls up the image of the check that I deposited. And she takes one look at it and very quickly says, oh, yes, this is definitely a fraudulent check. And I'm like freaking out, and I'm just kind of like asking her like what's going to happen, like what do I do? And she's like, well, since this check is fraudulent, like the fraud department's going to catch it, and it'll bounce out of your account within a few days. And she told me that like there's a possibility that they may have to shut down your bank account. And I was like worrying about that because like that would have been a huge mess. But the other issue that I obviously had was now that, I had just signed a lease on an apartment, thinking that I was going to have a roommate that was going to be paying half of it. And now that roommate wasn't who they said they were. And so I was going to have to look for another roommate. And that was a whole nother pain in the ass, trying to find another roommate. I made a post on Facebook Marketplace trying to find people. This time around, I insisted on meeting people in person to make sure that they were who they said they were. I found somebody that toured my place. They seemed like they'd be a good fit. They even applied for the apartment, and then they ended up ghosting me. Like 2 weeks later, the apartment complex calls me and they're like, oh, we've been trying to get a hold of such and such and they're not responding. And I try to reach out to her on like Facebook and she doesn't respond to me. And so then I have to like try to find another roommate, and like I can do a whole nother video about the pain in the ass that it was for me to try to find another roommate. I eventually was able to find a roommate, fortunately, and she turned out to be a pretty good roommate. So I'm glad that that worked out in the end. It was really like a stressful situation because I was worried that, because I didn't qualify for the apartment on my income. Like I didn't make enough money to qualify for the apartment on my own. And like they were asking me, because I was still trying to find a roommate. And they were like, well, we have to like get you approved for the apartment on your own, for just you, because like, we don't know when you're going to be able to find a roommate, and they ended up like running another background or like application just on my income information. And of course it comes back with like, oh, she's going to need a cosigner because I didn't make enough money. And that was also like, I don't have a lot of friends and relationships in my life. As I said, I didn't have really like anybody that could have like co-signed. Like my mom couldn't co-sign because she had horrible credit. I asked my dad to co-sign and he refused. He said no. I was fortunately able to get my brother to co-sign. So that luckily worked out. I was so worried that I was gonna like end up being homeless, like end up having them kicking me out of the apartment because of the fact that like I didn't qualify on my own for the place. And, I was worried I was never going to be able to find a roommate that wasn't going to, scam me or do other weird things. The other thing is that at this point I had already like subleased out my old apartment, so it wouldn't have been an option. Like I already gave the keys to the subleaser, so like it wouldn't have been an option for me to just go move back into my old apartment and just like forget the whole idea of living with a roommate and go back to working 2 jobs. Like that wasn't an option. So like I was genuinely worried for a second that I was going to end up like being homeless because of this whole situation. But fortunately, everything worked out in the end. Like I said, my brother agreed to co-sign on the apartment, and then I was able to get a roommate, so that I didn't have to pay for the entire place by myself. And they ended up not needing to shut down my bank account. I think it helped that I was very quick to like report it to my bank and like kind of clear my name. I also filed a police report with my local police department about the scam, and so I think that also helped, and I gave that information to the bank. But yeah, it all worked out in the end. I might have been stupid enough to deposit the fake check, but at least I wasn't stupid enough to, oh, my cat is rubbing his face against my thing. Um, Blue. Now he's headbutting my light thingy. Um, I might have been stupid enough to deposit the fake check, but at least I wasn't stupid enough to send the $2,800 to the movers, which in hindsight, that should have been a red flag because, like, I feel like $2,800 is not enough money to cover a move from California to Nebraska, unless you're like hiring movers, like sketchy Craigslist movers that just got out of prison. Um, yeah, I feel like it would cost a little bit more than that. But yeah, like I missed all of the red flags in this situation. Like what clearly happened in this scam situation is that someone's identity was stolen. So the person that Cassie, the scammer was pretending to be, um, they were a real person, an actual person, and this scammer used this person's actual social security number to apply for the apartment. And then clearly, when they were filling out like the income information and stuff like that, they actually did research on LinkedIn and things like that and put legitimate, employers' information on there. And then I think what happened with Donna, the mom, I think that was a real person whose Facebook page might have, was hacked into by one of these scammers. So like whoever it was behind this scam, they were pretty smart. They did a good job making it, making me gaslight myself anytime I thought this has to be a scam. They made everything seem like it was real and had me thinking, no, this can't be a scam. So I admit it, they were good. They were really smart. They had me fooled, and I think they would have had a lot of other people fooled. And then let's go back to the, driver's license situation when she was trying to sign the lease. I think what was happening was that it looked like she had a screenshot or whatever of like the identity theft victim's driver's license that she was trying to upload to this like security thingy, and it was detecting that it was a screenshot and it wasn't going through. Now, that was obviously a red flag, and maybe the apartment complex shouldn't have like allowed her to sign the lease without, yeah, that maybe wasn't a smart move on their part. But yeah, I'm glad that everything worked out in the end, and I've definitely learned my lesson from that, and I hope that you've learned not to do stupid things like me. Like, my advice to you is if you have to find a Facebook Marketplace roommate because, it's expensive to live. I know a lot of us, if even when we don't want to, we're forced to look for roommates because it's like, who can afford a one-bedroom apartment anywhere on their own, really? Like, but if you have to get a Facebook Marketplace roommate, biggest advice is like make sure you meet up with them in person or at least FaceTime or call them. Make sure you can verify that they are who they say they are before you go through with anything. Like I was very dumb. I shouldn't have even put in an application for an apartment with somebody that I had whose face I hadn't even seen. But yeah, that is like my biggest piece of advice. Like, don't always meet a potential roommate in person or, over a FaceTime or Zoom call. That was a big mistake that I made, and hopefully I won't have to live with roommates again, but if I ever do, I know not to make the same mistakes that I've made. But yeah, I hope you found some entertainment in this video, and also that you learned a thing or two from it and hopefully don't make the same stupid mistake that I made. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and if you could subscribe, I would greatly appreciate that, and check out future videos. I make a lot of autism videos, and yeah, so I'll see you guys later. Bye.